Hi there, my name is Philip Scorza and I'd like to welcome you to our program, Points of Interest. You know, as a resident of Santa Clarita Valley and a student of history, I found some really interesting places around our area. Well, today we're going to visit one of the most interesting ones and one of the most enjoyable places where you can take the whole family and walk around for a day or so. We're at Heritage Junction, which is adjacent to Hart Park. We're going to take a self-guided tour around here and then go visit with a man from the Santa Clarita Historical Society a little later. Why don't you come on along with us? Along for our little tour of history today, I brought a couple of buddies of mine. This is Casey Ruse Scorza and his good friend Elliot Keegan. Say hi.
Hi. Hi.
Both of these young fellows happen to be fourth grade students at the Wiley Canyon School and are really interested in history, I'm sure. Anyway, we're going to go take a look at some of these nice buildings. Come on. We're looking at the old Newhall Ranch House, which now sits next to the Saugus train station. They know that it has undergone many alterations over the years. This is obvious from changes in the way the wood was worked, the use of square nails in some parts and round nails in others, drop ceilings, double walls, close-off doorways, remodeled windows, that sort of thing. No one knows when the home was originally constructed or by whom. However, it certainly was in place before 1870. In 1875, Henry Mayle Newhall paid $90,000 for the entire rancho, which is today called the Newhall Land and Farming Company. The family used this house off and on for many years as their home. Finally, sometime after 1906, the structure was partitioned off as a bunkhouse for 4 or 5 ranch hands. In the 1930s, the cattle foreman and his wife and their children moved into the house. The house then sat in the middle of a huge feedlot where 10,000 to 17,000 head of cattle would be fattened for market, near the present Colossus at Six Flags Magic Mountain. In 1956, another cattle foreman moved in and lived in the house for the next 17 years until Magic Mountain created an overflow parking lot in 1973. Under the ownership of Six Flags, the grand old building fell onto hard times, being used as a storage shed, a stable for various exotic animals, and for employee Halloween parties. Finally, it was donated to the Santa Clarita Valley Historical Society, which moved the Newhall Ranch House to its present location during the nights of August 14 and 15, 1990. Here's a picture taken of the Newhall Ranch House in 1966. When it was still in use by the Newhall Land and Farming Company. Notice the little fountain sitting out front. This is the old Pardee House. It's a combination of many different structures that were joined together since the 1890s. Parts of it served as a lodge, a residence, a movie set, and a telephone exchange. William Edward Pardee was one of the early oil well drillers up Pico Canyon. He became a rather wealthy man. This house was the Good Templars Lodge in 1894 when Pardee bought it and moved it to the triangle of land bordered by Newhall, Market, and Walnut Streets. In 1894, the building looked much as it does today. Pardee's daughter Pearl occupied the house, which became sort of a social center and, curiously, a movie set. About 1917, Western star Tom Mix converted Newhall Avenue into one of several Mixvilles, making movies and holding some wild parties in a cottage behind the main house. In 1946, Pearl sold her house to the Pacific Telephone Company, which installed a switchboard and exchange in the former living room. After that, it was used by the Boys Club and as the Santa Clarita Valley Chamber of Commerce. The Pardee House was donated to the Historical Society in 1992. When restoration is completed, it will be used as a visitor center. Many scenes of old Newhall contain the most beautiful horses you ever laid eyes on. No exception was this one, which was owned by Ed Pardee, which you can see standing holding his horse. And both of them are right in front of the old Pardee House, which was located at Market and Walnut. This was the original Pardee House. To the left you can see the carriage barns of the old Southern Hotel that had burned down. Pardee bought what was left of the Good Templars Lodge, stuck it to the side of his building, and created the house you now see over in Heritage Junction. That's Mrs. Pardee standing out in front, and their daughter Pearl Pardee, who later married Bert Russell, who you can see leaning against the fence on the right of the picture. Meet Mr. and Mrs. Pardee. I'm curious as to why they're cross-dressing. Perhaps there was a Halloween party. In 1974, one of those rare snowfalls hit Newhall, and Tony Newhall went and took this picture of the Pardee house back when it was part of the Boys Club organization. You can see the snow on the street sign, Market and Walnut, and of course that's right across the street from the offices of King Cable. The Mitchell Schoolhouse adobe is actually a combination of several different buildings that have been moved, torn down, built and rebuilt over the years and bear little resemblance to any of the original structures. Thomas Finley Mitchell used it as his family home as early as 1858. Visitors included stagecoach drivers on the telegraph line, freighters on their way to and from the Soledad mines, and marauding bands of Paiute Indians. The feared outlaw Vasquez showed up from time to time, usually in time for dinner. The Mitchells formed the Sulphur Springs School District in 1872, teaching the first classes in the kitchen. In 1919, the adobe was used to build a residence for the ranch foreman. During the 30s, a doctor stayed in the small adobe house, adding a kitchen. By the 1960s, the adobe was being used as a storage shed, then a honey house, and finally a tack room. The adobe was slated for demolition in 1986. The Historical Society managed to save 3 walls of the adobe, moving them to Heritage Junction. The Kingsbury House was constructed in 1878 at the corner of 8th and Spruce Street, which is now called San Fernando Road. One of the occupants was Lyman Stewart, who with his partner Wallace Hardison drilled for oil in Pico Canyon, later relocating to Ventura County where they started Union Oil Company. In 1944, the place was put up for sale and it was bought by Charles and Ruth Kingsbury. This house is very close to being completely restored and will someday have a period furniture inside of it. Maybe a couple of kids on the porch. Would you guys like to know a little bit about the people who lived in this house? Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, his name was Charles and Ruth Kingsbury. And Charles Kingsbury did a lot of interesting things for a living. I have to look at my little self-guided tour paper here. But at one time, he was a Wells Fargo agent in Trinidad, Colorado. He was a veteran of the Spanish-American War, and he was living in San Francisco during the 1906 earthquake. Also, when he lived here, he liked animals, see, and when he lived here, he did a number of jobs as a movie wrangler and a stuntman. It's pretty interesting, don't you think? Mm-hmm. Charles Kingsbury died in 1963. His wife lived until she was 87 years old, dying in 1982. 5 years later, this house was moved to this site. This is the Edison House. It was a property of the Edison Company, and it sat near Magic Mountain. The interesting thing about this is that this is a company home. If you worked for the Edison Company, you rented this house from them and lived in it, of course. It's a very simple house, 4 rooms. As you can tell, it also is under restoration. This is the Little Red Schoolhouse. It started life in Culver City and was used as a tourist attraction and a movie set. In 1963, the structure was moved up here to Mint Canyon, where it was converted into a schoolhouse to hold desks, a blackboard, and a lectern, which came from Vallejo, California, and date back to 1858. This is the Ramona Chapel, and like the Little Red Schoolhouse, it was donated by Callahan's Old West Mission Village. We're in another area of the park now. This is what they call the group campground. If you so desire, you can rent this area and bring your group over here and camp out for a night or two. It's really a lovely, lovely setting over here. Makes me want to pitch my tent and build a fire. I'd like to introduce you to one of the many volunteers here at the Heritage Junction, a gentleman named Jerry Odell. Hi, Jerry. How are you? I'm Phil Scorza.
Hi, Phil. Good to meet you.
Thanks for coming on our program.
Well, I'm honored.
I was wondering, could you tell us a little bit about what you do here as a volunteer?
Well, basically, I just help assist with whatever's needed, whether it's help adjusting the foundation due to the earthquakes, or help restoration of just pretty much virtually anything. I do have my own personal projects here.
Which is what?
Is citizen forestry. I plant trees. I'm actually considered the arborist, tree care landscape person of Heritage Junction. And
I saw some of the I guess they're little California oak trees up there. Is that right? Is that what you planted?
Yes. Well, we've had volunteers, and I donated some trees I raised, or virtually latchkey trees that were just trees that were just growing wild in areas that were just getting trampled on, and I transplanted them and raised them, and some of them were sick, dying trees I had nursed back to health and planted them, and some are most of them are doing fairly well. We do have a gopher problem, but well, they're persevering, more or less.
Let me ask you a question now. How much time do you volunteer to the society?
Oh, I couldn't, I don't remember, but I just started a few years back, and I worked with Don Wilkie on a prospecting project he had going on during Old Town days a few years back, and I just been gradually getting more involved, and it's really growing on me. I love working with Heritage Junction and becoming a part of the Historical Society.
Do you come here, what, once a week or twice a week? Or?
On an average, once or twice a week, on the weekends in my spare time. And I have my own woodworking projects here. Right here is the beginning stages, the very beginning stages of my my wood working projects. I have various logs I salvage from trees that are dead or dying, and I salvage these logs and I slab them with my chainsaws, and I make rustic picnic benches and tables. And
I saw some of your work up that way, up in the campground, I guess it was, right? Have you got some stuff up there?
Oh, well, not yet. Those are basically, those have been there for many years.
Ah, okay. One more question I want to ask you is, why do you volunteer? Why do you help out here, give your time? Well,
it gives me a good feeling, basically, as an individual. It's kind of it's kind of a fellowship, being a part of the Historical Society, and the folks here, the team of staff and the regular volunteers really treat me with a lot of common courtesy and utmost respect, and that makes a world of difference with me. And there's no price, I mean, for that kind of respect that I get. It's very nourishing to me, and it helps stimulate enthusiasm and motivation for me to work on my own projects. And as far as citizen forestry, planting trees, everything from wood conservation and firewood to wood carvings, and I'm getting more into totem poles and sculptures and rustic picnic benches and tables. And someday I'd like to build a small version log cabin, a replica log cabins. And
that'd be nice.
I'd like to develop a small version woodworking shop here.
I was just wondering, do you live here in Santa Clarita or in the area?
Well, actually, I used to. I lived in Bouquet Canyon, but recently I moved to Fillmore on my friend's organic farm.
Sure, we've been out that way a couple times on our program. Well, listen, I want to thank you very much for stopping by and talking with us, and I really appreciate the time you've given us. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Please come and visit again.
We will. Thank you.
Thank you.
The Santa Clarita Valley Historical Society was founded in 1975 as a non-profit corporation to stimulate public interest in the history of the Santa Clarita Valley and surrounding areas, to collect and preserve the stories and artifacts which relate to local history, and to provide educational services to the community. The centerpiece of Heritage Junction is the old Saugus train station. As you can see, they have a great photograph on the wall of the train station as it was being moved down San Fernando Road. Must have been quite an operation. I'm sorry I didn't see it. We're standing inside the Saugus train station. A couple of customers over there are looking to see what they can buy. I hope they brought some money with them. Somehow I doubt it. What do you say we go through and look at the rest of the place? This is the agent's office. I just want to tell a little personal story. When I was a young man, my father worked for the railroad. Actually, he worked for the Milwaukee Road for 34 years. And at one time in his life, he had a job working in an agent's office, very similar to this. It was a cold winter November day, and he took us there, took me there, I should say, and I got to spend the entire day with him in this agent's office, and a few freight trains went by, and we were all alone. It was just a wonderful experience, and I'll always remember it, and every time I come here and see this, I think of that time. So you can see one of the very interesting places here in the train station. It's kind of interesting, don't you think? Mm-hmm.
Indians here, they have some beads and some arrowheads, and these things are from 6000 BC. These are the native Indians in this area. And over here is a picture of the last basket makers of Newhall. The world's largest Indian drum. It's from the Seminole Indians, and it's really quite something.
Our little drummer girl here, by the way, is our part-time co-hostess and full-time camera operator, Denise Bruce Scorza.
This, as you can see, is a cannon, and it was invented by Major Sam Ringgold and used in the Spanish-American War of 1846. It's called flying artillery.
We're standing in the baggage room of the Saugus train station, and I would like to introduce you to a man named Bob Deem. Bob, how are you?
How do you do? Glad to know you.
I'd like to thank you for joining us on camera today. I'd like to ask you a few questions. First off, how did you come to be a volunteer here with the Santa Clarita Valley Historical Society?
I came over to one of their regular weekend open houses, 1 to 4 every Saturday and Sunday afternoon, and talked to some of the people that were working here, and as a result of that, joined them on weekend work parties, and from there on to other activities.
And approximately how much time of your time do you give to a weekly?
Now that I am running this station, the train station, that I spend maybe 15 or 20 hours various activities, meeting groups here, or just maintaining the station. Other volunteer activities I've done may have been just a very few hours on weekends previously.
I notice everybody, a lot of volunteers out there working today. Can you tell me something about the people who volunteer their time?
They're just people from the community. Some of them have skills as carpenters or masons. Others are just have an interest and learn some of these skills or help someone else. And it's people that have become members and develop an additional interest in the organization.
Approximately how many do you think people volunteer to work around here?
It's sometimes just 2 or 3 on the weekends. When we have a major event such as our spring old time days, we may have 20 or 30 or 40 people volunteer. But they come from the membership, and it depends on the amount of time they have available to give us.
One of the things we should talk about is when Heritage Junction is open, and also when the station itself is open. Can you tell us that?
The historic park, its grounds are open during the week at the same hours that Hart Park has its gates open. So walk-in visitors can tour and look at the buildings from the outside. The train station, which is our headquarters and has a museum, is only open on Saturday and Sunday afternoon, 1 to 4 o'clock, except for very major holidays.
And you mentioned something earlier. What is the big activity that's coming up this spring that the people of the Santa Clarita Valley should know about?
Well, in April, we expect to be able to have our Old Town Days fundraiser community celebration, which a lot of activities available for families and utilizing all of our grounds and some of the borrowed grounds from the park. And there will be other announcements in coming weeks as to this is a big event.
I just want to add a little footnote here. I've been to the last two. They didn't have one this past spring because of the earthquake, but I was at the 2 previous ones, and it's an awful lot of fun for the entire family. Does it cost any? I don't even remember. Did it cost a penny or something like that?
Well, it's a little more than that, but it's a nominal $1 or
Right.
$2, and children nothing. We make the entrance the smallest problem. The main thing is to get people into our park and to have a good day.
Yes, and they do. There's all sorts of events. There's bands. They had melodrama actors last time I saw it, as I recall, and I think they had a man throwing hatchets down there by the group campground. So anyway, when you read about it or hear about it in the paper, come on out and enjoy yourself. And one other thing that I want to show you outside, we're going to go see that in just a moment, but I'd like to thank Bob for joining us here and to making this available to us. We really appreciate that. Bob, thank you very much.
Nice having you come by and get acquainted with us.
Well, it was nice meeting you. Thank you. And those of you at home, you should come by and see this for yourself. Now let's go outside and see one more thing. We're looking at the old steam engine, which sits right outside the station. This steam engine actually ran through the Santa Clarita Valley at one time. It was donated to the Historical Society by Mr. Gene Autry, who used it in making his movies and his television program at his Melody Ranch, which is really just a few miles from here. But the reason these Historical Society accepted it was because this engine actually ran on the rails, which you see right behind us there. That's the main line, and it actually pulled passenger trains and it pulled freight trains through the Santa Clarita Valley. Come on over here, I want to show you some things about the engine. Behind me is the cab of the steam engine. It has been taken off of the body of the steam engine, which is right up here. I don't know if you can get a shot of this up here, but you see where the rust ends and the black paint begins. That's as far forward as the cab actually sits on the engine body. It of course is being restored right now. It's taken apart. They're working on the boilers inside there, and they're working on the firebox itself. Apparently they hope to have it running within maybe a year or 2 years down the line, and of course when they do run it, they want to put some track in and take people for a ride. The tender, by the way, I should point out, is an oil-burning tender. It does not burn wood or anything, or coal or anything like that. I'd like to thank the 2 gentlemen on my left who have come by here and gone with us on our little journey, Casey and Elliot. Have you 2 learned anything today?
Yeah.
What did you learn?
We learned about trains and about the station.
Mm-hmm. And what did you learn?
Same thing.
Same thing. Excellent. And did you see something up on that hill down there that you want to mention to us? Do you remember what you saw up there on the hill?
I saw an old church, an old schoolhouse, which you probably saw earlier too, and I saw where they used to camp.
Right, and well, actually what I was thinking of was the dead deer that we saw earlier. Saw a dead deer, right?
Yeah.
Okay. We've had a really nice time today at Heritage Junction, and we hope you'll come out sometime and just walk around and enjoy yourself. And please join us for our next show. This is Philip Scorza for Points of Interest.
Rancho Camulos, Ventura County's first historical landmark, was a Mexican land grant awarded in 1839. History lives on at the 13-acre museum of Rancho Camulos. Take a tour highlighting the rancho's operation under 3 generations of the Del Valles. Visit the birthplace of Ventura County's first working winery and learn about the mysterious history of Helen Hunt Jackson's Ramona. Visit ranchocamulos.org or call 805-521-1501 for information on tours, museum hours, and special events. Located off the 126 in Piru, Rancho Camulos, where hospitality calls home.